Hey guys, welcome to the LT Brings the Heat podcast. We're your hosts, Sean Laird and Adam Heisler, where we talk about baseball and sports performance. With topics ranging from coaching, business, and player development, our goal is to bring you a no BS approach to development in baseball and sports performance. Hope you guys enjoy. Let's rock and roll. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of LT Brings the Heat. Adam and I are going to sit down. We're in the middle of summer baseball season. It's crazy right now. Adam just got done in Hoover, Alabama this past week, and I just got done with our MPL in Indianapolis this past week. But it's crazy right now, but we got a great topic today. But before we get to the topic, how's everything going, Adam? Crazy?
Everything's going great. We were able to win the bracket play yesterday. We came back home last night. Got up and moving this morning. We went and did some lunch on the Causeway, and then I'm going to go back into work a little bit this afternoon before we have some games tomorrow over at the Shucker Stadium that we weren't able to play a couple weeks before. So summer ball is officially in full swing now, and we're just strapped in tight, ready to go. What about yourself? What are you up to?
Oh, I had the craziest day on Wednesday. So we had a double header at 10 a.m. and then 12:45 p.m. on Wednesday, and we had BP early that morning. And then we went straight to the games. I got done about 3:15. And so I went straight from there to go do lessons from 4 to 10 p.m. And so I got home that night at 10:30. I was like, man, this was a crazy day today. It's just like, it's 100 mile an hour because I want to make sure, and obviously I know you're the same way, I want to make sure that I have as many hours available in the summer as possible because, the guys that want to train, I want to be there with them 24/7. Because if I expect them to run through a wall for me, I'm going to do the same thing for them, which I know you feel the same way.
Exactly.
But all right, guys. So we got a fun topic today. We're going to talk about something that I've talked about a lot in the past on social media, and me and Adam have talked about behind the scenes a little bit. But the topic today is going to be biggest misconceptions or biggest mistakes that parents and players have with hitting lessons and hitting lessons in general. Because we could talk about this with a bunch of different lessons, pitching lessons, strength and conditioning, speed training. But we're going to focus kind of on hitting right now because it's very easy for us as coaches to sit here and say, hey, that's wrong way of thinking. You shouldn't be thinking that way. And we understand that there's a lot of people that baseball is not their profession. Building athletes is not the profession. So while we might see it as common sense at times, we got to understand like, hey, we got to look back and go, these clients will come in, with all good intentions, but there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to, hey, how fast is this going to work? What are we trying to do here? And basically, I'm going to tee it up here with Adam first, and then we'll say, Adam, so you got a client coming in. A dad comes in with a son, and he wants to work on hitting, and he comes in and goes, hey, let's do this, and this. What's the biggest misconception that they have walking into that from a day-to-day perspective?
I would say the biggest misconception is they think it's going to be a quick, easy fix. If you're serious about trying to get as good as possible in this game of hitting, you have to, number one, you got to commit fully to it. It's a process that you have to go all in or either just don't even get in it at all. So one thing we like to tell people, and for this dad, for an example, is it's not going to be a Band-Aid fix. We're not going to just strap a Band-Aid on it and say, all right, he's ready to go back out there and ready to play. The big process that goes into it is first, let's check out their mobility stuff. Day ones are usually all about just evaluations. I like to kind of check out how they move, what they look like when they're moving, get some video footage of them. And then we try to come up with a plan after that going forward. So it's not a lot of you're going to get day one, hey, I'm throwing you BP right out the gate. It might be we're going to spend 30 minutes on the tee. It might not even swing a bat for a little while. We'll do some PPC pipes, some movement stuff. We may get to some soft toss at most. I mean, it's very rare that I ever throw BP to a guy on day one, just from the aspect of if I am, it's 5 to 10 pitches just to see what he looks like against it. And then after that, it's let's go back home, put the plan together, and now we'll put this process going of what you're doing with me as well as what you're doing on your own or what you're doing maybe with your high school coach or what's the steps going into it next. So I think the biggest thing to take away from all of it is don't show up one day for 1 hour thinking that I'm going to have some magic fairy dust to sprinkle on you, and all of a sudden you're going to hit 500 for the rest of the summer. I wish it was that easy because we'd all be gurus at this thing, and we could just go around touching kids, and all of a sudden they're the best hitters on their team. So
absolutely,
it is a process, and I think that it just all goes back to we talk about all the time the comparison of, hey, well, I heard you worked with this guy, and he's doing really well, so I brought my kid here. Well, number one is the kids could be totally different athletes. Work ethics, mental approaches, there's so much more that goes into it, not just, well, if my son works there, he's going to start hitting like his other son. So I think that's the biggest thing in all of this is just let's find out what you are as a hitter, where are our strengths, our weaknesses. And I even like to ask kids that first day is, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Like, do your self-scouting report. And if you try to tell me you don't have weaknesses, then you probably shouldn't be there, because obviously you're already really good anyway. So don't start off with that. And usually at first they don't really know how to answer, and then I start throwing some stuff at them, and it's, hey, I struggle with the away pitch, or I struggle with all speed, or my timing really isn't that well. And then that way we can kind of help them understand that they're there for a reason to get better, but now it's like a doctor writing a prescription of how are we going to improve, and these are the steps to get you to where you want to be. What's something like same thing comes in your way now? So it's first day at Laird's training. We've heard a lot about you. We've seen your social media, and we're really intrigued. But we're starting off. What's one thing you want to start off with the parents?
So I love all that stuff. I agree with everything that you just had, and you're sitting there talking. I immediately started thinking about situations and experiences I've had over the years with those exact type of parents and players. I will say, and I'm just going to get this forth to people that are listening to this podcast. Parents, you're going to feel like you're getting attacked a little bit here, and some of you players as well too. It's obviously it's nothing personal for people that are listening to this podcast. It's just, it's very easy. I run into a lot of dads that are very successful in their fields. I love running into a lot of people that are very successful in their fields. There's people that I've worked with as peers, and people that send kids for lessons, and they're very successful at what they do. So they immediately think that they're automatically going to know and be very successful about hitting. And most of them are humble enough to say, hey, I don't know, I don't understand. And they understand. They come to guys like us because they want us to build their kids and we build them to elite athletes. Saying that, the biggest misconception is exactly what you just said. They think that if they are paying money for something, that they're going to see results, boom, immediately. We're going to have Mike Trout next week. And this was worse a long time ago. I do a better job now of explaining the process to parents in the beginning of the day, and I'll kind of break it down. So like when the kids come in, I'll ask the kid, just like what you do. I'll say, hey, what's your biggest strength? And the kid, always usually is saying, well, I hit the barrel of the ball, or I hit for power or whatever. And I say, what's your biggest weakness? And just like you just did, like they kind of freeze. They don't understand that question. And then you have to give a couple examples, curveballs away or fastballs inside, something like that, like something simple. Let's keep it simple. And then I ask the parents, and parents, just FYI, if you're listening to this, the biggest red flag, and I've had this happen, unfortunately, multiple times, is I'm like, hey, what's your son's biggest weakness? Oh, he doesn't have any weaknesses. He just needs to get better at this, this, and this. So parents, if you're showing up for a hitting lesson and you're saying that you don't have any weaknesses, first of all, there's guys in the MLB. Every person in the MLB has weaknesses. I had a ton of weaknesses. Adam had a ton of weaknesses, and we were very successful at what we did at the levels that we played. Mike Trout has weaknesses. A-Rod was known to be weak at the inside part of the plate, like real inside on the black and about a ball in. So, but A-Rod, ended up hitting, how many hit? Like 690 home runs or something like that?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
So, like, to sit there and say you don't have any weaknesses is automatically showing that you're closed-minded. And when you're closed-minded, showing up for a hitting lesson when the whole point is to learn and get better, that's a problem. So the biggest analogy that I'll try to get is I'll explain to them in the beginning, like, hey, this is a process. There's going to be times that you're struggling. There's going to be times that you're pissed off. And then there's going to be times when something just all of a sudden clicks that we've been working on for like a month. And you're like, wow, that's unbelievable. And the biggest reason for this is I talk about semantics all the time with hitters and with parents. And I'm like, it's hard. It's when we can teach kids muscle memory and, the hand-eye coordination, and proprioception is a word that I always teach on the first day is, proprioception, awareness of your body in space, knowing where you are at all times, knowing what you're doing. And that is one of the hardest things to teach, because we can teach a kid a good position, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't feel and know when it happens. So like you were talking about before, we got player A and player B. Player A has been in, Laird's training for a year and he's tearing it up. Player B comes in, he's like, well, hey, I want to hit like player A. This is why I'm here. Just like you said earlier, like we're coming here to Laird's training because, player A is tearing it up. Well, we expect to do the same exact thing. Well, where is this kid athletically? Like you said, where's this kid strength-wise? Where's his mobility, right? And does he have a work ethic? Because the thing is that kids will come in and like, hey, we want to hit, we want to tear it up. Awesome, let's do it. But people don't understand, like, you got to do this every day. You got to be there every single week. You got to be consistent. Think about it. If you average if there's 4 weeks in a month and you're there for what you miss 1 week out of that month, you're missing 25% of your lessons. That's a high number. I mean, name another profession that you miss 25% of your lessons on and you're successful on. Like, 25% of your days. Like in the weight room, if you miss 25% of your days, you're done. Like, I mean, there's no way to catch up. So the biggest thing is I explained to them, like, hey, this is a short-term and a long-term process. In the short term, you're going to get better, but you're going to struggle a little bit at times because they're going to challenge you. In the long term, right, if you're consistent, that's where you're going to have the biggest gains. And if you're committed to this and you're doing the things at the lesson and you're asking questions, you understand what you're doing, and you're doing things outside of the lesson, that long term, that's when things start paying off. And then you can compare yourself to that player A, like, hey, where am I at here? And hold yourself accountable for those actions. So basically, it's kind of an orientation on day one. And a lot of it's about discipline, accountability. I'm a big mental toughness guy and a mental training guy. I want to try to train that as much as possible. And before in the past, I would just talk about mechanics. Mm-hmm. And I realized that was a mistake after a few years of doing this, because we could talk mechanics all day. But at the end of the day, like, unless the kid wants it, unless there's some mental discipline and there's some grit in that kid, it doesn't matter how good his mechanics are, it's not going to translate. And that's a big thing for me. But, when you do some of the mobility assessments and strength assessments, are there some parents that kind of like, hey, what is this? Like, what does this have to do with hitting with you?
Oh, 100%. It's, hey, we're here to swing the bat, or we're here to hit batting practice, or we're here to hit off the tee, as opposed to, I don't think they understand, once again, going back to it, how in depth all of this is. And I mean, this is what we do. We study this nonstop. This is what our profession is. This is what we enjoy doing. We have a passion for. So the biggest thing is when we tell guys this, it's not to say we have egos. It's to tell you we've done our research and this is what works. And this is why we do this kind of stuff. If you're coming to us, just trust us. What I compare it to is, if I'm going to get my car fixed, I take it to the mechanic. I don't walk back there in the back with him and act like I know how to fix my car. I'm dropping it off to him because he knows that's what he majors in, and he knows how to fix my car and get it back to me nice and safe, where I'm able to ride out of there and, hey, the fix is on. So the same thing goes from this standpoint, is let us do our job when you do bring them in there, and just trust us. I think trust is a big thing you have to build with these guys. But it all goes back to, I like how you talked about day one, is it used to be more about mechanics. Now it is about the mental toughness and what we're going to have to get through and what's it going to take to kind of put a plan together. Because when I first started doing this, it was the same thing of, I got to make this kid look good ASAP, like right away, because he's got a game coming up this weekend. Where now if they're coming in for the first times and they're in the middle of their seasons or the middle of their travel tournaments, like, that's a tough swing, because we're in a position where we want the kid to be successful in the field, but at the same time, we know they need some mechanical changes to get them there. Now, are you willing to put in the mechanical changes during the week and maybe suffer a little bit on the weekend because you're trying something new, and then maybe in the long run you're seeing the benefits of it? So that's when another kind of murky water that you're going down of, all right, if you're truly about this, like, we're going to have this process go. Maybe their hand placement is going to have to change for this certain reason. Now, will it maybe not have worked that weekend coming up, and some guys will never come back because maybe it didn't work for them. But at the same time, if you're really about the bigger picture and not being the best 12-year-old out there, maybe it's, I'm working towards a bigger picture to make my JV team, then make my high school team, then maybe get a chance to play in college. So it's just putting the plans together, because I talked to a lot of the kids this weekend. It was the first time I really got to dive in and be around them. And the biggest thing I learned from all these guys is these guys hit, and they hit every day. And it's, you almost have to kick a couple out of the cage. There's 2 or 3 that text after the first game. We played at 8 a.m. We were done for the day. Coach, not trying to bother you, but can we come by the hotel, grab the balls? Like, we're going to find the cage. And that was just so cool to see that this is why these kids are successful when they're 16 years old. But they've installed this work ethic in them, and they know what they need and what works for them. And they know this isn't easy. And I think that's another big thing is, like, I would love to have a sign in the facility when you walk in, like, be ready to fail, because you're going to. And, like, let them know that this is part of it, but we're going to get you over the hump. We're going to do competitive stuff. We're going to compete with you. You're going to compete with other hitters, and that's what's going to see the bigger picture out there on the field. I just got a message from our pitching guy that had the throwing program going on, and there were some live at-bats during the week that I wasn't able to see, with the 13-year-old throwing against his senior in high school. And it was just cool to see they were competing against each other, where when they're going to flop around, it's going to be the other way around, is that 13-year-old is going to get so much better competing against a guy like that. It was just so cool to see that atmosphere that's been built in there. And I think parents don't know that that's what they're signing up for more than anything, is the atmosphere of being around other players, being around the coaches that care about them. That, I mean, me and you talk until 12 o'clock sometimes at night, putting a plan together for a hitter. Or, hey, what do you see in this guy? What's one thing you'll work on? And I think that's probably the biggest thing that people don't know about us is, and even when we played, I don't think I ever looked back and was thinking about how much Coach Kitchell was thinking about us.
Yeah.
Like, or making lineups, or this guy versus this guy, righty, lefties, all this kind of stuff. Like, when you're in the moment, you don't think about all that stuff. But now that we're on the other side of the coaching thing, I mean, me and the coach this past week are staying up doing scouting reports on these guys. We're trying to let each kid be successful and put them in the right spot to be successful. So, hey, this guy's getting ready to come pitch this next game, so we're going to save him here. He's just going to DH. Like, there's so much more that goes into it than we just show up at the ballpark and write a lineup card. Just like from a hitting lesson standpoint, there's so much more that goes into it than, hey, how you doing? We're going to put him on the tee. We're going to front toss. We're going to throw BP, and then we're going to shake your hand and say, awesome job. We'll see you next week. Like, that's just not how we do things. And I think a lot of people appreciate that aspect of we're willing to go 100% into fully just to try to let each kid reach their full potential here.
Absolutely. And, you know, I love that you brought up the work ethic thing. And there's one of the biggest misconceptions is you can show up 1 hour a week and you're going to be a superstar. And the problem, I'm going to run through this a bunch of things that parents are going to take on. You know, 1 time a week hitting lessons, yes, you will make gains. The problem is that if you're only doing it that 1 time a week and you're only focusing on those things, those gains are going to be small over a long period of time each week. But if you're listening and you say, Coach Adam is telling me to do this drill, this drill, this drill, and I need to focus on these things, I need to do this 50 to 100 reps a day, and I only do it with him, I'm going to struggle long term. I'm not going to understand it. My muscle connection, my feel, proprioception, it's not going to work. So parents, if you're signing up for hitting lessons and you don't have a place for your son or daughter to hit outside of those hitting lessons, that's mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 is not having something at the house, whether it's a tee, a net, some soft, total control balls to be able to hit on your own, a mirror to do some mirror work on. My older guys, I tell them, like, everybody should own a sledgehammer. Everybody should have some bat weights. There's so many things that we could do. We do a lot of dry swings with bat weights as well for bat speed. There's so many options, and I have a ton of drills for guys to do at the house if they don't have that equipment. But we talked about earlier in orientation, I make sure now that I tell parents, like, hey, we are guiding here, and I'm showing them what to do, and I'm guiding them what to do. I can't do it for them, so they need to make sure they have this, and this available for them on their own. And in the past, I wouldn't do that. In the past, I just automatically thought it was common knowledge that, hey, we need to do these reps outside of the lessons. And again, I'm a guy that's extreme ownership thing, so I'm like, well, that's my fault. I should have brought it up in the beginning. I should have said, hey, like, you've got to be swinging 4 or 5 times a week. And I use the multi-sport, and there's always excuses. So we'll talk about a mistake now. There's a mistake of saying, I don't have time. And that's the biggest, I'll be PC here, that's the biggest bunch of BS that I hear from people is I don't have time. And until I was 15 years old, I played 5 sports. And I'm not going to sit here and talk about me, but my point is, when I tell people that, it's not to brag about it. It's like, oh, I did 5 sports. It's no, I still found time because baseball is my love. That's what I wanted to do all the time. And I wanted to be good at it. So when I was in other sports, I was still hitting 2 to 3 times a week during the off season, no matter what. And I had a hitting lesson every week. And then I would do two days a week outside of that hitting lesson, and I would hit. And I still, to this day, the repetition, which reps is something that's completely overlooked. And, I love, Conor McGregor said this a couple years back, is that I don't have any talent. I was not born with talent. I worked for everything I had. I did it over and over and over and over and over until I became great at it. And I feel like there are guys that were born with some natural born talent, but the guys that are right there that have some skill, and they work on refining that skill and being perfect with it, AKA hitting lessons and doing things on your own, that's what really separates you from the pack. Like, you can't expect to show up at your high school practices. You can't show up at your travel ball practices where everybody else is doing the same amount of reps as you, and you're not doing more than that and expect to be better than these guys. If player A is above you, here, and you're below him, like, you got to work twice as hard to catch up to that guy or get better than him. And so the biggest mistakes that I see people make is, hey, Coach Laird is gonna turn me into a superstar. And again, that's the goal, obviously, but we can't do that without that work ethic. And you're talking about 16-year-olds is a reason why Louisiana Knights are the Louisiana Knights. And I got guys in the Indiana Bulls organization. Indiana Bulls are the Indiana Bulls because of the type of players that we have. Saying that, I still have to get on a lot of those older guys and being consistent with their hitting too, because unfortunately we got kids that are very successful and they're high school coaches, not to rip on high school coaches, but a lot of times if you see a kid that's very good, those coaches kind of leave those guys alone and they focus on the other kids. Not meaning any harm at all, but a lot of times those older kids, those better kids, they need more accountability. They need you to be hard on them. And that's one thing I try to take that love and accountability, like hard-nosed approach, tough love approach at the same time. Because I know that, once I read what the parent is personality-wise, if I see a parent that's a little hard on their kid, then I'm going to approach a little more love and kind of relate to them a little bit. If I see a parent that's too easy on their son, then I'm going to approach that a lot more hard-nosed and like, hey, let's get after this. And I can sit here and I can tell a bunch of stories about certain kids over the course of 2, 3, 4 years that have completely changed in their personality after, and training and part of our program. And it's a big step in that process where this kid made a decision like, hey, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And it took him 2, 3 years to get to that point. And you got other kids that think they're going to make that turn in 2 months. And it's not going to happen like that. This kid, the kid I'm talking about in the back of my mind, and I'm not going to mention his name, but he, had tears in his eyes in one of his first sessions. And now he's one of the top prospects in the state of Indiana. And it is what it is, and I'm not even going to say how old this kid is. He could be in college for everybody listening right now because I don't want anybody to know who he is. But it's just one of those things, like it's a process that has to be done over a long period of time to become great. Don't fall in the trap to thinking that one time a week is a process. That's not a process. That's you showing up when it's convenient because your parents are taking you to a lesson. That's what that is. But what's some other things, though, that the guys really struggle with mentally and kind of understanding what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it? Not just the players, but obviously the parents too. Like say 3-4 months in, they're really struggling at something. And you see the progress. You see it's small, but you see them starting to get it. How do you get them kind of understand like, hey, it's not going to happen overnight?
I think a big thing you got to talk to them about from both a parent and a player perspective is this doesn't come easy, as well as I may be teaching you something you've never heard of before. And I'm not – when guys come in, maybe they think hey, we hear that you like to elevate the ball. Well, number one, we like to hit hard line drives. Where's the ball at? It's up in the air. So, yes, we're going to train on hitting hard line drives consistently. That's the number one thing. Oh, I thought elevate, like hit pop-ups. I'm like, no, we're not worried about that. So the big misconception that when we first got into this was, it was 3 years ago, was our lessons were different than any lessons around the Mobile area from a standpoint of it wasn't the swing down, create backspin. It wasn't the hands go first, all that kind of stuff. It was literally, we're going to dive in deep to this, and it's going to be not your average. You show up and I sit on a bucket and just flip to your kid. So I think the number one thing was this is different than you've ever done around this area before. So, well, you're going to look at me crazy because we're using a PVC pipe and tennis balls. You might, what does that have to do with hitting? It's just all about building a plan for that certain hitter. And I think the cool thing is, and a lot of people don't understand, is some drills work for some guys and they don't work for others. And then some guys need more of this, they need less of that. And so that's another cool thing of if you walk in and just kind of check us out for a couple hours, nobody's going to be doing the exact same stuff. It's always cued to what's going to make this kid get better. And so that's the number one goal that we're having. I know both of us as coaches are, is how can we let each kid reach their maximum potential? But I think another thing from a parent standpoint is just going back to the trusting us. Not a lot of people like to be told that they're not good at something or they need to change something. And that's this human nature and everything. But when you can kind of build trust with them, and then you have video to back it up. Video is one of my favorite things to do with guys because they can, number one, see how much they improve, but number two, they compare themselves to maybe a major leaguer. And some people will, hey, my guy's 12 years old. He's not a major leaguer yet. Yes, he's not, but we're going to try to have some similarities. Like I grew up wishing I would have swung like Ken Griffey Jr. all of my life, and maybe it would have worked out like that. But nobody told me that was okay to do. It was always, this is what you have to do. But anyways, going back to, we're going to watch video. We're going to see how much they're improving, how much they're tracking, as well as for the parent to see that they are improving. Maybe not necessarily in the games yet, but they're improving on learning there's proper swing in the cage. Now that next step's to carry it over to the game. But the last one is key, is once you come in, feel like you got it, you go out, you have a great weekend, and then you just disappear.
Yep.
That's you can't do that. You just disappear thinking you're fixed for the rest of your career. Or oh, I'm good now. I'm ready to roll. And then don't come see you again in 3 or 4 months saying, hey, I'm struggling again. Well, you gave up on the process. You gave up on the plan. And as a coach, I take offense to it. And I understand things do come up, like you were saying before. People get busy, whatever it is. But if you're truly about the development that you committed to day one and you want to reach the maximum goal, if this is something that works for you, then you keep going with it. And I can tell you, and we both tell you this, is the ones that continue to come once a week, twice a week, whatever it is for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, you could tell which ones do it. And they're consistent about doing it. And they're always on top of their thing. Swings, the outside work, the inside work, to what's their mental approach, to how they carry it over to the game. And if they have a bad weekend, they don't skip the next week because, oh, maybe we need a break from it. They know what works for them, and that's why they're successful at it. So I think that's the biggest thing that drives me is when guys do think they have it, that they just quit, and then they think they can go replicate it on their own. And then if it's not replicated the right way, they come back in a couple weeks saying, hey, we thought we had it, but now we got to get it back again. And going back to the first thing I ever said was, we're not Band-Aid fixers where we strap a Band-Aid on it and you go out there and you're ready to go. It's such more of an in-depth process to that. And that's why the game of baseball, in my opinion, is the hardest game there is, because and hitting a baseball successfully is the hardest thing to do. Is the repetition is very key, and it's the right repetition too. Just because you think you may come in, kind of get some knowledge, because I don't know about yourself, but I've had some parents come in and just try to pick my brain about things and then maybe try to take the stuff I teach them and try to go do it on their own.
Yep.
And then they think, hey, I saw it on a YouTube channel, or I saw it on Twitter. I saw it, like, this is what we're working on now. And then they come in and we're doing it side by side. I'm like, that's definitely not what we're trying to do here. I appreciate your effort. Yeah, I appreciate your effort, but that is definitely not what we're trying to do here. Just trust us, and we're going to take care of your kid. So that's been the biggest thing. I guess it's hard from a standpoint. Like I said, I know things come up, but if you're fully committed to this and your kid work, because a lot of the times, if it's the kid, if it's up to the kid, they'll come hit every day. And I understand financially there's stuff that has to go into it, but it just stinks when you see maybe a kid buy into it, but the parent thinks, they've got it, let's just take them out of there, from the standpoint of, hey, this is something, number one, they enjoy doing because we're going to have fun, we're going to get better, we're going to compete, you're going to meet all these people, you're going to gain experience. And we've talked about it before, is there may be sometimes a guy will come in for a lesson and we talk 30 minutes about how important your grades are, or how important you being a good teammate is. And I've had one dad, it was a couple weeks ago, and he came up, it was a 30-minute session. He wanted to get some work in with a kid that comes in regularly. It was kind of a last-minute thing. We spent the first 20 talking about, well, you explained to my son how important being a good teammate is, and carrying his characteristics on the field and being in the classroom. And he said, Adam, I could honestly walk out of here right now, pay you my money, and we didn't even swing a bat today. But it's the experience that you're getting. It's not, well, I'm paying this amount of money, so we only have this amount of minutes. So every time you're talking, you're wasting time. A lot of the times the talking is the most important part. So what's some things that kind of get under your skin, I guess, from a standpoint of just what you're seeing in the world that you've been doing this for so long?
Yeah, and I love that you brought up that, like, we're raising young men and young women at the same time as building them as athletes. And I love that you said that. And I know the type of person you are, and I would send my kid to you in a second, and if I didn't know anything, which I guess I don't know anything. Right? I have the same thing. Like, and I always tell, the reason why Laird's training is different than all the other programs around here is that I will always tell people, like, we are training your son to be a man first. Like, we're training him and holding him accountable. I make it mandatory for the kids to cancel their lessons if they are old enough to drive, and I make the freshmen start doing it as well, even though the parents are still driving it if they're freshmen in high school. They need to contact me and text me if they have to cancel, if there's a conflict. And it starts that accountability process. It starts them understanding that. So, and I would say 99% of the time, all the parents love it, but there's of course a small percentage of parents that feel like they need to be in control of things, which is fine. It's just personalities. But as long as they understand the kids need to do that too. But that's for me, 100%. When you talked about the timing and consistency as a client, and I'm going to break down I actually have a 3-month minimum commitment when you sign up for Laird's training. And the reason I do that is because anybody that comes inside the doors, my stamp is on them, right? So, like, if that's a Laird kid, right, or that's a Laird's training kid, or that's an Adam Heisler kid, like, if they step inside our doors, I want to make sure that I'm doing everything possible to teach them to the best of my ability when it comes to a mental, physical standpoint. And if somebody shows up for 2 or 3 weeks and leaves, that person could say, hey, I trained with Laird, but they didn't really train with me. They were there for 2 or 3 hours. And I always tell people, like, you'll never have the same lesson twice. Like, it'll be a different lesson every single week. And even though we will use similar drills or something like that, it's going to be completely different. What the approach, the concepts, our mindset, it's going to change all the time. And the problem is that people will show up. And again, I'll talk about financials so the parents that are listening, like, well, yeah, I can't afford this. And I'll explain what you need to focus on. But there's 3 types of clients. There's the clients that are here year round and they do it every week for a year or years upon years. And those are the ones that are committed 100% to the process. Those are the ones that have the biggest gains over a long period of time. And the way I look at that is like, oh, well, you know, these clients, of course, are going to make gains. They're there year round. Well, yeah, that's the point, is you don't just lift weights 6 months out of the year and stop. Like, if you're wanting to do that, you want to be consistent long term. And I get it. Like, if you're playing football and you can only hit once a week during football season, and it's with an instructor like ourselves, great. You're still getting better one time a week in that. If you could find an extra day in there every now and then to swing a little bit, perfect, great. And then once football's over, maybe you're back to hitting that 3 times a week because you're prepping. If you're a 2-sport athlete, if you're a 3-sport athlete, same thing. 90% of my clients are multi-sport athletes. And when I hear people say an excuse like, oh, we can only commit to here or this or a month at a time. If somebody comes at me and they say, we can only commit to a month, I tell them no. Only 2 months, I tell them no. And it's nothing personal. I just tell them, like, again, like, you need to be, if you're trying to get better, like if you're going to an instructor, the whole point is consistency to get and make improvement. And since I do the same thing with weights, with weight training, they need to commit to 3 months at a time. So you either need to spend 6 months in an off season with an instructor every off season. So it's 6 months every off season, and you can stop when you're in season if you'd like, and do whatever you want to do, but you still have to maintain and do the stuff that we taught for those 6 months. Or you got the client that's 9 months out of the year. Client that's 9 months out of the year and he kills it, gets after it. Maybe he's from November to August, right? Somewhere right around there. So he starts maybe after football season, or he just needs a couple months off to kind of rest a little bit, which don't even get me started on rest and stuff like that. Like rest is, 6 weeks at a time, whatever. Like, I talk about arms and resting arms, but that's a topic for another day. And so you got the six month client, the 9 month client, and the 12-month client. And so I would say the majority of my clients are anywhere between that 9 to 12 months, somewhere right around there. And I will give all my parents credit. Like, the majority of them are almost year round, and they understand that it's a process, and they basically are making a commitment. If it's year round, they say, my son wants to be a college baseball player. So if we've got to spend this amount of money per year for him to be able to achieve that dream, or she to be able to achieve that dream, we're going to do that. As long as they're there every single week and they're doing the drills on their own and they're consistent and they hear info back from me that they're working hard, I will say that 90% of parents will be more than happy to pay for that. And then there's the other ones that are wanting to sign up. And again, like I said, the 9 month is fine too. But then there's the other ones that want to sign up for a few months at a time, and they come at you right in the beginning of the season. And that's the biggest mistake that people make. Like, you can't make long-term changes or big changes when the season has started. Now, our jobs, it's like, well, hell, damn, we gotta work on timing. Like, we gotta make sure the person's getting the barrel to the ball. So we're not even talking about mechanics as much. Mechanics are on the back burner. We're doing that a little bit, obviously, but it's like, hey, how can I get this person to get the barrel to the ball? Maybe it's a little bit of a path fix here and there to get the barrel on plane longer. Maybe the person spins out of the zone, so we got to keep them through the ball. So there's little things that we have to change. So if you're a parent that wants to sign up for hitting lessons and you're only wanting to do it in season, that's you're setting your son or daughter up for failure. And again, you're going to be sitting there after 3 months and going, wow, heck, it's not as big of an improvement as I want. Well, of course, because we're too busy trying to fix things that we can't fix because the muscle memory is getting jacked up from the chaotic environment that they're in. And that's another thing is, like, if you're wanting to sign up for lessons, you got to understand that off season is prime time. That's your build time. That's how you, like, off season, and people talk about all the time, that's where elite athletes are built. That's where the best hitters are built, all that stuff. They have to create new muscle memory for them to get a feel in that proprioception long-term in the off season. And then that allows them to implement that in season. In season, you can't control the environment that you're in. You can't control the stimulus. So there's a slow pitcher, there's a fast pitcher. It doesn't matter what you're trying to teach them. all they're cared about is hitting the ball. And when they care about just swinging the bat, they're going to ignore and forget all the stuff they're taught, and their anxiety is going to creep in, and they're just going to swing whenever. And that's one of the things that I see a lot of, is if guys that we'll work with, sometimes they try to go back to their own mindset, their own thought process, and they try to go, well, this is what made me successful in the past, but I'm going to go straight back to this. And the problem is the competition has changed. The competition is better now, and you can't rely on that strength that you had as a 12-year-old, because everybody's strong at 16, 17 years old. Yeah. But that was kind of a long-winded answer to that question. But there's the timing aspect. If you're a parent that struggles with finances, and I get it, I understand it 100%. I took a job right out of college for $20,000 a year, so I understand what it means to, like, hey, you got to be smart in how you handle your money. What I would do is I say, hey, you know what? This is where we are financially. We're going to commit to 3 months as hard as we can. December, January, February. And right around that holiday time, or November, December, January, if you're in the South and you guys start playing earlier, 3 months, and I will make sure that I commit to that money in those 3 months and give everything I got. And I will do that every single year. I will do it every single year to those 3 months. And I will plan to save this amount of money every month, so my son or daughter can do that. And that's the best advice I could give is, you have to make plans, and obviously to save you're in a situation like that. But I have kids that want to hit so bad that they will spend half of their money on the lesson. Mm-hmm. The parents and the kids will go half and half with it. And that right there, I respect 100%. I remember I used to work for free to get my hitting lessons sometimes when I was a kid. So I would work for that coach. So there's a lot of things that go into this, but you got to understand, like, the parents that are listening, whatever adversity there is in front for when you're trying to do this, there's always a way around it. You gotta plan it, whether it's a financial thing or it's, hey, I got to find 1 hour of my schedule a week to make sure that I have time to get my son there consistently. And that's kind of how I want to run through it, because I know there's a lot of people that think, like, hey, we could show up 2 or 3 times and we'll be fine, and you could teach on your own. If you're a parent that does that, which we've had parents like that, you're assuming that you can figure out all of our knowledge base of playing the game for 20 years on top of all the studying and learning that we've done, and be able to teach that. There's things that we can see, like in tryouts for the Bulls, I can watch 10 swings and I immediately know what I need to know. Mm-hmm. And some people get upset about that. The 10 swings is not enough for you to see if this kid can make the black team or the white team or whatever. Actually, it is. That's exactly what I need to see. Now, there's certain kids, if I need to compare them, I want to see them live. But it's just like boxers. Like, if you're watching film and you see weaknesses on the film, it's the same thing with hitting coaches and hitters right there. But I will say one thing that I want to ask you about, and it's something that I think about all the time, is do you have somebody that is struggling, and they're struggling with when they're working with you, and they want to quit? Does that ever happen?
Yes, it has. It has happened. It was the same kind of thing you mentioned with the guy having the tears in his eyes. One of the first days I put a younger athlete on the hack attack machine facing velocity, and I think we went through 50 balls and he didn't touch one of them. And that was a day that he physically broke down, he mentally broke down, and he thought he couldn't hit because he had worked so hard to get to that point where he was ready for the velocity machine. He had done his swing changes, done his commitment, and mentality, thought he was ready for it. And it's just like anything else in life. When you try something for the first time, you usually aren't good at it. And a lot of people, when they get on that hack attack velo machine for the first time, they're not very good at it. It takes somebody special to get in there and just be able to barrel the ball up consistently against the velocity off a pitching machine, because we all know it doesn't have the arm action and everything like that. So that's one individual that stands out from, he literally just wanted to quit baseball there. There was a couple that just wanted to quit baseball together because they thought it was just so hard, and they were used to being so awesome at 8, 9, 10, 11, all the way up, that had started to catch up to them. They didn't work as hard as they thought they should have early on, and now they're in that predicament where they're struggling. They're not starting on their high school team, or they don't want their summer ball. It's a struggle because they're actually playing somewhere outside of that comfort zone, and that's where it comes in, where their standpoint of, is this something I really want to continue doing, or do I not? And that's where you just have to look in the mirror and decide, because like we mentioned a couple episodes ago, is this game will weed you out, and it does every single year. It weeds people out. So there has been some, and I can say honestly that the ones I've talked to have worked through it, and it was just like anything else we talk about on here, is they overcame that adversity. Was it something tragic? No, they weren't having success in the batter's box. But they thought it was tragic because they're such young kids right now that, oh, my God, I'm finally out of that slump. I had a kid text me today, Coach, you got any tips for me? I'm in a slump after playing 4 games this week. And I'm like, that's not a slump, number one. Number two, how often are you hitting? Go hit today. You're going to get more at-bats. It takes a big leaguer 50 at-bats to get comfortable. We're all in the same boat right now with these teams that are up and running. There was a lot of really good pitching this weekend and not as much offense. Later as the games went on, more offense started to arrive. But you can just tell that everybody's in the same boat right now from an offensive standpoint as we're behind. But I'm so glad that you hit on the aspect of don't come see me at the start of your season because it is too late. And I want to go back to Swing Kings, the book that they come out. We mentioned, I think, our first ever podcast. J.D. Martinez, when he committed to that swing change, it was the night after he just got done playing a game in Houston, their last game of the season, game 162. The next day, he was on a flight to California to work with Craig Wallenbach and said, I'm ready to start my swing change. And it wasn't – this is a professional major leaguer that turned into one of the best hitters, all-star, MVP candidate, all this stuff. But at his prime of his career that had got him there, he said he needs to get better because he's not going to stay there unless he makes the adjustment. And props to him for he didn't wait until February or January to say, now I'll go see him. It was literally the day after his last game. Flew out to California, moved out there for the offseason, came back, and he's been this awesome guy ever since that just absolutely destroys baseballs. But it was a commitment that he made in the offseason. And it's so cool that you hit on that standpoint because we stress that so much. And it's just like working out, like he says, there's an offseason, there's an in season. The off season is where the changes happen, where you can dive in way deeper than in season, because in season we all want to see results right away. So if you bring a kid to us in season, number one, like you said, you got to get timing, and we're just trying to get the barrel to the ball for now. We'll have to get all the other stuff later, because if we try to dive in way back, like a step one, like you just walked in the very first day, we wouldn't get off the tee, going back to what I mentioned earlier. But we can't do that because you have a game coming up. So just parents kind of buy into this going into next season. And I love the 3-month commitment you made is if you go as hard as you can, November, December, January, I promise you when February 1 hits and you get to practice high school maybe for the first time, your kid is going to be so much far advanced, ready to go, both because the swing's ready to roll, his mentality's ready. But number one is his confidence is through the roof because he just busted his butt for 3 months, and he knows that he's ready to go for the season, as opposed to the one that's like, oh, coach, we got practice next week. Can I come in and hit? And I haven't seen you since last offseason or last summer ball. And so that's just too late from that standpoint. And it just shows that we get to sit back and relax and know which ones are truly in this for the commitment and who wants to play college baseball. And from a parent's, the financial standpoint that we mentioned before is, if my kid wants to do something and I'm going to try to give him every possible reason, I'm going to try to back him 100%, but he's going to have an agreement with me that he's going to give 100%. Otherwise, I love the parents that you mentioned, they're splitting lessons with their son or with their daughter from a standpoint of parents. You show some ownership there. Now it's, hey, if you go and you have a crappy lesson or you weren't locked in, you weren't focused, that's coming out of your pocket. That's coming out of your piggy bank because 100%. You wasted it. Exactly. So it's almost like come up with a contract between the parents and the kid of, hey, well, I'll do this, but here's what you're going to do out of it. You're going to bring it every freaking day. Even if you're not doing good that day, you're still going to fight through it. You're going to stay after. You're going to do extra work. If Coach Sean tells me to do this, you're going to arrive before. If he tells me I need to be there early for my pregame stuff, there's just so much more that can go into it. And I love that you hit on that standpoint. That might be a contract we have to write up for November time that our clients are going to have to sign between, have 3 of us, parent, player, all in one. Here we go.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing is like, I'll kind of close out with this, and we can add you can add anything you want in this, but there is no success without the adversity and without the struggle. And it's a cliche that people say all the time. And if you are in a hitting lesson and you're struggling with something, you're struggling with a concept, as Jocko Willink will say, good. Struggle is good because there's always something that good or great that comes out of that struggle. And I'll give an example. As I had a kid that was with me for a short amount of time, 5-6 weeks, and he was really, really, really making gains, but he was struggling with certain drills. Like he had no hips, no bottom half at all. And he went from no bottom half to a decent bottom half and started hitting the ball with more power. He was a lefty with some speed. So take a wild guess what his high school coach was telling him to do.
Slap it and go.
Slap it and go, man. We got to get those base runners on. Let's go. And this kid was strong as an ox and could crush. But it was not taught how. And so we were like, hey, let's teach him how to load properly. Let's teach him how to get into his bottom half, keep his hinge. and really fire his backside. And started improving. Saying that, he was still struggling because somebody that's never used their bottom half before, it's not going to happen 100% of the time, right? It's probably going to be 50-50 for a while. So he was improving. And the dad wasn't really ever there at the lesson. He would come in and peek in every now and then. And he came up after a kid had a good lesson. And the kid, and again, this is talking about being a good teacher and understanding how to work with certain kids. He didn't understand feel, and he couldn't tell the difference. Kind of like with pitchers, a lot of pitchers throw balls and strikes, and they don't understand the difference between the feel of a release of a strike and the release of a ball. Same thing with a hitter. He didn't understand the feel of the barrel. And this sounds, I'm saying this right now, somebody might be listening, like, this sounds preposterous, but he didn't understand, like, he would hit a ball hard and crush it and kind of look at me for validation and not understand. I'm like, dude, that was money. Like, you hit that ball 90 miles an hour and you just crushed it, and that's a double in the gap, no problem. And he's doing well. And then he would flare off the next pitch. And I'm like, nobody's going to hit like 1,000 in here. Like, if I could fix muscle memory in an hour, I'd be a billionaire and you wouldn't be here right now, right? I'd be like, hey, everybody, it's 100,000 per session, muscle memory, you're Mike Trout, see you, bye. But the thing is the dad came up afterward because he watched the last few reps. He struggled a little bit. He goes, man, he's just not really getting this, is he? And I go, whoa, you could honestly, man, like, I respect, your son, I respect you, but you can't be further from the truth. Like, the kid has been making some great gains. And he goes, well, he just feels like he struggles at times. I go, because he's supposed to. You got to understand that. Like if you come to me, or if you come, and this is for parents, like, if you come to any instructor and you don't struggle at all, that instructor is wasting your money, period. Like, if it's an easy session every single day and you're dropping bombs and you're hitting this 40 mile an hour BP that everybody and their brother can already hit, you're wasting your time. Like, you need to struggle. Like, if you struggle with velocity and, Adam's got you on the hack attack and you're struggling, good. If you're working on sliders and you're struggling, good. If you got a guy that can't wait on off-speed pitches and you're struggling, good. There's small gains each week, and over a long period of time, over a year, go, damn, that's impressive. It's like the weight room. If I need to increase 20 pounds, does that 20 pounds happen in 1 month? Hell no, it doesn't happen in 1 month. You see 2 to 4 pounds a month. And over the course of a half a year, boom, there's the gains. And that's the thing, is we're always working. And so parents, as you're listening to this, anyways, the dad he understood it from there. And he's like, he never really thought of it like that. Like, hey, like, when you're improving, just because it looks like you're struggling doesn't mean some of the other reps aren't improving. It's just consistency. It's all it is. And I can remember learning how to hit a slider in college. Like, I didn't all of a sudden become better at it. I got a little better over a period of time, and then to the point where I was solid at it my last couple of years of school. So parents listening to this, understand, like, struggle is good. Struggle is what you want. It's going to help you with that process. And if you don't understand why it's happening, well, it's as simple as this. Have your son ask the question. And if your son's understanding and your son feels like he's being successful, then you should back him up 100%. Whether you understand it or not. And the dad, that specific dad, knew nothing about baseball at all. So, and nothing against him. It's nothing negative against him. And he probably knows who he is when he's listening to this. And, but he understood the process, and now his son just kicks ass and takes names. So it is what it is. But is there anything else you want to kind of close out with, Adam, before we get rolling?
No, I'm glad you hit on that. And one goal, you mentioned nobody bats even 1,000 in the cage, is we just try to tell you when we're doing our increments of, you try to hit 7 out of 10 on the barrel, and you're going to be really successful if you're able to do that. Now, it sounds very easy. Now, the next time you take that into your lesson, try it. See if you can hit 7 out of 10 balls hard on the barrel, and then you can walk away saying you had a really, really good round. I think the last thing that I like to touch on is, don't be the guy that's always saying one more.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of that time, you don't need that one more. And I had a kid on me this weekend that jumped out after he felt good. He smacked 3 in a row, and he got out on his own. And that was cool to see that he's mature enough to know that I'm locked in. I'm ready to go. I don't need to sit here and just get more because I'm supposed to. I know what I needed to get ready for this game. I came in, I felt that good feeling, and I'm so glad you hit on the feel part too, because we all can take the technology stuff out that we talked about before. Is you have to feel like you're hitting the ball and remember that feeling. remember my hands being in this position, remember the ball coming off the barrel, or where was my legs at in the load, where was everything at. You have to be able to remember that, because the best ones remember that and they can consistently do it. But the main takeaway from this whole episode, guys, is if you want to be a good hitter, you got to hit. And we can't stress that enough. It might be the easy way out. I don't care. It's just the number one rule. If every good hitter I've ever been around, played with, coached, they hit and they hit and they hit, whether it's dad throwing BP, mom throwing BP, brother, whoever it is, hitting off a tee, hitting soft toss. I mean, just from whatever that standpoint is continue to hit. It's the only way you're going to get better at this game of baseball.
Absolutely, guys. Yeah, and this, I mean, we could probably talk about this for 2 hours. Me and Adam actually talked about, like, hey, we'll do this for a half hour, and it ends up being almost an hour long. And there's a bunch of other things we could talk about. So maybe, maybe once some more experiences go on, we'll talk about this again. And if anybody's listening to this, you want to kind of know more about hitting lessons, you want to know what we're doing. Maybe you want to know how we run hitting lessons. We can have an episode about that, guys. So we'll kind of break this down again in the future, but. Hope you guys really enjoyed this episode, kind of give you a little bit of behind the scenes at Laird's Training and Heisler Heat. And if you guys really enjoyed this episode, please go ahead and make sure you give us that 5-star review if you really enjoyed it. Please, and definitely share as well. Definitely share this as well. We've been getting a lot of reviews in lately, so we appreciate all the feedback and everything. So,
hey, Sean, give them a heads up. Next week it might be an in-person.
Oh, yeah, next week. So we are going to be at the MPI in Georgia. So Adam is taking his team to the MPI in Atlanta, and I'm taking the Bulls, obviously. So we're going to do some hanging out and maybe do the podcast in person next week. So it'll be crazy. It's going to be a little different, but it's going to be awesome. I'm actually going to go watch the Knights play, and I'm planning on doing that. And Adam's planning on watching us play a little bit too. So. It's always going to be fun and enjoyable in that atmosphere, and hopefully we get good weather and then get to enjoy it and watch all those games. But
yeah, man, we're looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, until next time, guys, we'll see you later.